Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and today we're going to take a look at a Gameweek 8 No-Haaland Wildcard draft. Now this video is going to be very dangerous because we are going to be exploring the possibility of going without Erling Haaland, the robot and the man who has been dominating the Premier League. We're going to look at the case to go without Haaland and see how a draft without him potentially looks like. So if you guys do enjoy this video, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. So just before we get into this graphic here, I do want to mention that at the end of the day, whether you go with Haaland or not, it is, there's no right or wrong. I feel like there is a case for both sides, right? But at least while we are on a wild card for Game Week 8, I feel like we need to consider the possibility of going without Erling Haaland. I definitely did. Currently, he is in my draft for the moment, my Game Week 8 wildcard draft, but I definitely did take a look at how a no Erling Haaland wildcard draft looked like, right? So in this graphic here, I'm going to discuss the advantages and the disadvantages of this particular no-Haaland draft and kind of look at the case to go with him and without him, right? So one of the good things about going for a no-Haaland draft is firstly that you get to fit all the players right now that a lot of us are trying to fit in. So that is Ollie Watkins coming off a hat-trick plus 2 assists against Brighton, loads of good fixtures for him coming up, and then you get the double up of Spurs attackers in Maddison and Son, and you get to have the premium Mohamed Salah 12.6 million currently, and also the premium defender 6.7 million Kieran Trippier. So you get to fit all these players into your wildcard draft if you don't go with Erling Haaland. So obviously there's loads of money to spread around as well. And the case to go without Haaland actually is that you probably will only captain him once over the next 8 game weeks. Now, a lot of the reasons why we actually pay the price that we pay for premiums, namely Erling Haaland, is because we will be captaining him most game weeks. And that's where the value of paying so much for a premium kind of comes in, right? But in the next graphic, we'll discuss this a little bit more, where captaincy-wise, I do feel like we will probably only captain Erling Haaland once over the next 8 game weeks. So definitely there is a case here to be, or there's some discussion here to be made about whether we can go without Erling Haaland. And of course, aside from that, some other advantages are that we can have Brighton and Arsenal assets ready on the bench for us when it comes to Game Week 10. Brighton and Arsenal are players that we want to hop on because they do have a good fixture swing then as well, right? So those are, those players that we want to have on the bench, potentially a Mitoma to come in from Game Week 10 onwards, an Arsenal defender, maybe even Estupiñán if you want to keep him on the bench for the time being. All this can be afforded if you go without Erling Haaland. Now, of course, there are other upgrades that you can make within your draft. Now, one of it is, of course, going for Kieran Trippier instead of Dan Burn, that a lot of us would look to go for to enable us to fit everyone in currently for the template Game Week 8 wildcard draft. So Burn to Trippier is already one upgrade that you'll be making. Another one that I see is also Udogie to Pedro Porro, because I've had a look at Spurs numbers in focusing on the defenders particularly. I feel like Pedro Porro's numbers are a lot better than Udogie. As an attacking asset, Porro is looking like he's getting into more advanced positions as well. So those are the advantages of going with a no-Haaland draft. Now, of course, we do have to look at the other side and consider the disadvantages. So firstly, without Erling Haaland, you are going against a lot of FPL managers because his ownership right now is 91.9%. So that's really high, and when you add in players who potentially will still choose to captain him throughout the course of the next 8 game weeks if you go without him, right? You can kind of imagine his effective ownership. Maybe it wouldn't be double, maybe it wouldn't be 180, but you can imagine it will be about 140 to 150 at least, right? So in terms of effective ownership wise, going against it, that is very scary. And of course, it will be difficult to bring Erling Haaland back into your team because he is so expensive at 14.1 million. So it's likely you will have to go on a selling spree and take a couple of hits to amass the money to get Haaland back into your team, right? And of course, if you don't want to do that, then you probably will have to sell Mohamed Salah, who is the next most expensive player in your team at 12.6 million. You probably have to sell him and get Haaland back using free transfers. I mean, if you don't want to take that many hits, you will have to make a sacrifice there. And come that time when you have to sell Salah to get Haaland, maybe you want to keep Salah as well, but because you have to get Haaland back, you are kind of forced to do it. So these are positions you may find yourself get stuck in with the no Haaland draft. So another disadvantage of going without Haaland. Now let's take a look at a captaincy metric, which is actually one of the bigger cases of why you can choose to go for a no Erling Haaland draft. So taking a look at the game week 8 to game week 15 captaincy metric, as you can see here, for the next 8 game weeks, Manchester City's fixtures aren't great at all. And that's why I say that there is probably only one game week that you would want to be captaining Erling Haaland, which is Bournemouth at home in game week 11. If we go game week by game week, from game week 8, you're likely to captain Son here, who has Luton away. Game week 9, you're spoiled for choice between Salah and Son, because Salah has Everton, Son has Fulham at home. Come game week 10, when Man City play Manchester United away, that's also when Salah has Nottingham Forest at home. Potentially you want to captain Salah then, right? And then in game week 11, assuming that you have Haaland, you can choose to captain him. He has Bournemouth at home, and that's probably the only time you would want to captain him. But even then, if you go without Erling Haaland in game week 11, there is a perfectly plump fixture for Mohamed Salah, Luton away in game week 11. So it's perfectly fine not to captain Haaland that game week and go with Salah instead. Now from game week 12 onwards, it's also not great to captain Erling Haaland because Son has Wolves away. Game week 13, Liverpool and Man City play each other. So and Son also plays Aston Villa at home, so that's not great fixtures for any of them. So potentially we look elsewhere for game week 13. Game week 14 and game week 15. In 14, there's Tottenham for Haaland, there's Fulham for Salah, so you're probably going to go with Salah there. And in game week 15 as well, Aston Villa away for Manchester City, Sheffield United for Liverpool, so you probably choose Salah as well. So if you take a look at this captaincy metric, there is actually a very good case to go without Erling Haaland, simply because it seems as if you would only be captaining him in game week 11. Now this said, right, of course, a lot of things can change, right? Once you know, a couple of games are played and maybe Haaland starts scoring and you know, can't stop scoring against the big teams, which is totally possible, then maybe we want to struggle and get Haaland back in as well. But at least based on the fixtures that we are looking at now, there are perfectly fine alternatives to Haaland, right, in Salah and Son that we can choose to captain in this bracket of game week 8 to game week 15 fixtures. Thereafter, from game week 16, we will try to get Haaland back already if you have if you are going with the no Haaland draft. So now, after all that's been said, let's finally take a look at the game week 8 no Haaland draft. So this is the team, the no Haaland Game Week 8 Wildcard draft, and the team value is really low at 99.2 million, so I'm sure a lot of us can afford it. Money is not an issue once Haaland is out of the team, as always. You probably will have money left in the bank as well. It's a 3-4-3 formation now, and let's break the draft down. So we're going to go with Areola and Turner as the keeper pairing, same as the current Game Week 8 Wildcard template. I don't think there's any reason for us to go against it because the fixtures are there and they're really cheap, this keeper pairing as well. Now, in defense, I've gone with Medicash, Pedro Porro, Kieran Trippier, and then the two defenders on the bench are Zinchenko and Kabore. So talking about the defenders in the draft currently, Medicash I still feel is a player that we want to go with to capture that attacking threat that he has, and also Aston Villa's good run of fixtures coming up. Now for Pedro Porro, I prefer him to Udogie because looking at his numbers, they are actually better than Udogie in terms of attacking threat, and whether or not they keep a clean sheet, you know, both of them will get clean sheet points, Udogie and Porro. So going for the player with more attacking threat here, even though he's slightly more expensive, going without Haaland just allows us that extra 0.3 million to go for Pedro Porro. So that would be my preference here. And then for Kieran Trippier, I'm going for him instead of Dan Burn. Dan Burn is of course 4.5, but with the extra money from not going with Erling Haaland, you can get Kieran Trippier, who is way better as an FPL asset because of his attacking threat, loads of chances that he'll create, his bonus points, etc. We know what we get with Kieran Trippier, right? And already since game week 6, he's already been keeping clean sheets, getting attacking returns, etc. So Kieran Trippier, definitely an upgrade that I would make in defense. Now, the two defenders on the bench, I've gone for Kabore as a bench fodder. Now, Zinchenko is there to take advantage of the Arsenal fixture swing from game week 10 onwards. So he'll be waiting on the bench, lurking and waiting to come into the starting 11 from game week 10 onwards. And Going without Haaland just allows us to have that strength on the bench and sub in players as and when we need them. So come game week 8 and 9, you probably won't want to start an Arsenal defender, but come game week 10, that's when you will be starting Arsenal players. So Zinchenko is just a player that will be in preparation for game week 10. Now in midfield, we have Salah, Son, Maddison, and Diaby. Now this is players that we probably already are looking to target in game week 8, right? Salah, of course, for the good run of fixtures. Maddison and Son is the Spurs double up that a lot of us are trying to fit in as well. Diaby is there for the Aston Villa triple up. He looks really good as an FPL asset, and what he offers at the 6.5 million bracket is just something that I feel gives incredible value. So we still want to go for these players. But the fifth midfielder I've gone for is actually on the bench, and it's Kaoru Mitoma, because come game week 10, as I mentioned, we want to hop on Brighton and Arsenal assets. So already on the bench, you see there's Mitoma and Zinchenko. These are already players that are waiting on the bench to come on from game week 10 onwards, right? And you can of course make a couple of transfers from now, from game week 8 until game week 10, right? You will have one free transfer in game week 9 and one free transfer in game week 10. You can bring in more Arsenal and Brighton assets then as well, so you still take advantage of the fixture swings. And then up front, Alvarez, Darwin Núñez, and Ollie Watkins. Now to talk about Alvarez, of course, if you're going without Erling Haaland, you still need to have at least some Manchester City coverage, and I feel like Alvarez perfectly allows you to have that Man City coverage for cheap as well, right? He's really cheap at 7 million, and of course over the course of the last couple of game weeks, he's been ticking along really nicely. It seems like he will not be losing his place anytime soon as well. So we're going to go for Alvarez here to continue to cover that Man City attack. They will score goals, but the hope here is that going for Alvarez covers a little bit of that, as well as the upgrades elsewhere. We'll be able to cover going without Erling Haaland. Now, for the other two forwards, of course, there's Darwin Núñez. Now, the case for Darwin Núñez is that Jota is now suspended. Gakpo is in a brace as well. He got injured in the game against Spurs. So Darwin Núñez is, of course, in line to start. And actually, there was a comment made by Klopp to say that he was going to start, but of course, he was carrying a little bit of a niggle. So he wasn't fit to start, but he was fit to come on for the game against Spurs. But the thing is, after Jota's red card, Núñez was already ready to come on, but after the red card, the tactics changed, and that's why Darwin Núñez didn't come on. But you can imagine that from game week 8 onwards, when Gakpo is out, Jota is out, Darwin Núñez will just come straight in, and long term as well, Liverpool's fixtures are really good. So assuming he keeps his place, this will be a major advantage for the No-Haaland draft as well. Right now, lastly, there's Ollie Watkins, who is really expensive at 8.0 million, but a lot of us are trying to fit him in because of his performance against Brighton. 3 goals, 2 assists. There's every reason for us to jump on him. I don't feel like it's really very knee-jerky, because at the end of the day, game week 8, we already wanted to hop on Aston Villa players, and there aren't really a lot of good attacking options in the forward positions here, aside from those 3 that we have on the screen already. So Ollie Watkins, with the fixtures, with the form, I feel like we just go with him as well. And that's kind of why we are trying to go without Haaland, because we want to fit Watkins, Maddison, Son, Salah, Trippier as well, all in one draft, right? So this is it. Here we go, the No-Haaland draft. As I mentioned, this draft looks really tempting, and I definitely did look at it. I considered it a couple of times. I will continue to consider it for the next couple of days until the Game Week 8 deadline. There is definitely a case. I would say that I'm 60% to go with Haaland still. I'm 40% to go without Haaland. For the time being, this is my No-Haaland draft. Let me know what you think and whether you are going with or without Erling Haaland down in the comments below. But thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you guys in more Game Week 8 content very soon. Bye bye.